folks who are not able to attend.
That's fine.
All right, I think we can get started. It's 11:11, and folks are still joining. We have about 25 folks. Let me. All right. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining. And for Kathleen, this is our bi-weekly all-hands project managers meeting of the UCLA Health IT group. And we have guest speakers once a month to talk about IT project management, leadership, and management skills from an outside perspective, because we're all involved in our day-to-day work. And we would like to get some outside lens or outside perspective into some of the things we do. So we take this 50 minutes or an hour to talk about things in the industry and from an outside perspective. Today's topic is going to be on leading in a time of uncertainty. The topics will be around the cybersecurity, which is kind of our modern day Cuban Missile Crisis, because organizations like UCLA and governments are all getting attacked every day, and cybersecurity is an important topic to discuss. And so today we want to welcome the Honorable Kathleen Kennedy Townsend, former Lieutenant Governor of Maryland, who will talk to us about this particular topic. And from a project management knowledge area perspective, this falls under the risk management. And as our project managers, we always try to manage and mitigate our risks for our project success. And similarly, we want to apply a similar framework for cybersecurity also at the national and organizational level. And as I said earlier, in our audience today, we have folks from the managers from the IT security team who are also well-versed in the cybersecurity arena. So we expect some questions from them. And Kathleen is going to talk about, how to do threat detection and also do response planning, to leadership skills under crisis conditions when we do get cybersecurity attacks and issues, and how we can still manage projects and lead our organization in times of volatility and vulnerability to security issues. In terms of Kathleen needs no introduction, but we just want to I just want to highlight some of our achievements in the public service and leadership skills. She's a graduate of Harvard University and a University of New Mexico School of Law graduate. She spent her career addressing some of the most complex challenges facing our nation. She served as the Deputy Attorney General of Maryland, where she tackled public safety and justice reform.
Actually, that's not true. Shall I tell you about myself?
Sure, go ahead. You can go ahead.
I was the Deputy Attorney General of the United States. As Lieutenant Governor, I was the anti-crime point person. So I was in charge of the state police, Department of Corrections, juvenile justice, and I handed out all the money for local police. So I reduced crime by 33% in our hotspot communities, that is, in our high crime communities. And I worked on finance, and I worked on pension reform, retirement reform. I started a center at Georgetown. When I started it, no state had passed reforms, and now 18 states have. And you have one in California called Cal Saves, which none of you are probably familiar with because you work for a system that already gives you a 401k plan. So it was not needed for you, but it's needed for those who work in small businesses. Then I worked in I just finished working at the Navy, where I focused on shipyards and shipbuilding, where we are far behind. And whenever I said to anybody, we've got real challenges in shipbuilding, people would say, Kathleen, why do you care about shipbuilding? The next war is going to be cyber. And so after I left the Navy, I've decided to focus on cyber. Okay. Is that more succinct, Sankar?
Yes, very succinct. Yeah, and it's good to hear from you.
Thank you.
All right. With that, I'll turn it over to Ian to moderate the session. And for folks, please feel free to ask questions raise your hands and verbally ask the question, or put it in chat, and then we'll pause periodically and pick up those questions for Kathleen.
Thank
With
you.
that, go ahead, Ian.
Thanks, Sankar. Yeah, I usually do the thank yous at the end, but in this case, Kathleen, I'd like to thank you up front, both for your personal service to the great state of Maryland, to the country, and of course for your family's service, and for helping us become this great nation that we have. So for all that you and your family has done for our country, I just want to say thank you from all of us.
Thank you. Well, that's what we were taught, that politics was an honorable profession. And I'd like to make sure that people can believe that. And I think working in a hospital system is a way to serve our country. And I was just talking to, I think, a former congressman who says, there are many ways to serve. You can serve in in the military, and you can serve in the hospital and make people get healthier. And that's what each of you are doing. So I want to thank you, each of you here today, for your service. So thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Kathleen. Well, before we jump into cybersecurity and all of that good stuff, I'd love to give folks just a sneak peek into your childhood and just how it was growing up as a Kennedy. I mean, your stories are so fascinating. And the conversations around the dinner table are equally as fascinating. So if you don't mind spending a few minutes on that.
Sure. Well, Ian knows that I have to thank Ian especially. I gave a TED talk a few weeks ago, and it was about the challenges of cybersecurity in the United States. And I started out by describing that cybersecurity is an enemy within, and also poses enemies without. And it's something that I understand from my own childhood, because I saw that when I was 4 years old, when other parents were taking their kids to the playground to swing on the swings or go into the climb on the jungle gyms, my mother took me to the Senate Racket Committee hearings where my father was investigating the mob. And my first whole sentence was, I refuse to answer that question on the grounds that it may tend to incriminate me. Because I heard over and over again that answer to my father's questions. And the mob did not like to be questioned by my father, in fact. And when I was in third grade, they, in fact, threatened to throw acid in my eyes when I was at Our Lady of Victory School, where we had one nun and 45 kids in our class. And they threatened to throw acid in the eyes of my brothers, Joe and Bobby, and me. And so for a period of 4 months, I couldn't leave the school. I had to wait till my mother came to pick us up. We sat in the principal's office, and we couldn't leave our home because we were under such threat. And they did that because they wanted to intimidate my father. And my father refused to be intimidated. And a lot of people do get intimidated under such threats, but he said no. And eventually, after a period of time, the RICO statute was enacted, which made it easier to investigate the mob. So that was the threat from within. And then we also, at that period of time, had a threat from without. We had the Cuban Missile Crisis. And for about most of a period of 10 days, my father was in the White House trying to figure out what to do, because the Russians had put nuclear missiles into Cuba, which had the ability to hit us in Washington, D.C. And one night he came home, and we had just said prayers. We always said prayers nightly prayers around my parents' bed, and then we said the rosary. And he said we could be bombed, and he asked each one of us, did we want to leave Washington where we could be safe? He asked us individually, and each of us said, no, we'd rather stay with you, Mommy and Daddy. So my parents were very keen on us understanding what was going on in the world. And in fact, at the dinner table, they would quiz us on current events. And my mother thought that was such a good idea that when we got older and we had in carpools to go to school, she quizzed the kids in the carpool. And you could hear them say, "Oh no, Mrs. Kennedy is driving. What happened today?" And we were also supposed to know history. So I remember one question that Daddy, for some reason, asked over and over again: where was the Battle of Bunker Hill fought? And it was fought on Breed's Hill, not Bunker Hill, for those who care about the Revolutionary War. And the whole idea was that we were really supposed to be responsible and know what was going on in the world. And that because we were so lucky, we had a special responsibility to make a difference. That's what my parents thought.
Thank you so much, Kathleen. And folks,
we also were supposed to be good at sports. I have to tell you,
yes,
we did play touch football, and we had touch football practice every Saturday. 10 steps cut to the left, 5 steps cut to the right, 4 steps button hook. I don't know if they do that anymore, but that's what you did. That's what we did.
And
that's
maybe
right.
you can talk about the gloves in the background. You were talking before we joined, before everyone joined.
Yes, yes. For those gloves are from Hasim, who won the heavyweight boxing title. He won them when I was lieutenant governor, and he's from Baltimore. And the guy who gave them to me had supported me in my campaign, and he said, "Hey, he won the title, Kathleen, but he won it because everybody else just made a mistake. He's really not that good." But he gave them to me, and I put them up. And then I thought I really should see what happened to him. And then I learned that he won them again about 3 years later, and he was the heavyweight title champion for 7 years. So my friend didn't kind of made a mistake about how good he was. In fact, he was very good. So that's kind of cool. And then next to it, if you can see, I don't know if you can see it on the, oh yeah, you can see the footballs. That's when the Ravens, our team from Baltimore, won the Super Bowl championship. So I think that's the advantage of being lieutenant governor. You get these great championships whenever you win.
There you go. There you go.
It was fun. It's fun.
Another reason to jump in the ring into politics.
Yeah.
Kathleen, I'd love with the current state of what's going on in the world today. I was thinking about the conversations that your dad and President JFK were having to avert, right? The Cuban Missile Crisis. I'd love if you don't mind sharing like the thought process, because I know that everyone was telling JFK to go one way, and he was like, "Nope, calm, paused, thought deeply with your dad, and came up with a way to avert this crisis." I'd love
Yeah.
to share a little bit about that.
I will tell you about that. So the military wanted to bomb Cuba, and they were very keen on doing that. And they said they could do it very discreetly and do it very well. But what my uncle was, Jack Kennedy, was not very sure that the military could be entirely trusted on that. And I'll tell you why. First of all, the military and the CIA, mostly the CIA to tell you the truth, had advised that he go into the Bay of Pigs. And that was a disaster. They gave him bad advice. And so he didn't really believe that they always knew what they were doing. And that if he had gone into Cuba, he knew it could start World War III. And there'd be no way to hold them accountable as he was able to hold them accountable in the Bay of Pigs. And second of all, just about 2 weeks before, James Meredith, who was the first Black man to try to go into the University of Mississippi, and which was in Oxford, Mississippi, tried to go in. And this is before many of you were, born. There was a real problem up there. 3 people were killed, 250 people were injured. There were riots, and my uncle called in the military who who lived in Memphis, Tennessee. They were stationed there, and that any of you have gone from Memphis to Oxford, it's like a 2 hour or an hour and a half drive. But it took the military 4 hours to get from Memphis to Oxford. And so my uncle understood that just because if it took them 4 hours to get from Memphis to Oxford, how do you know they were going to do a good job when they said they could in getting to Cuba? So he wasn't really trusting that they could do what they said they were going to do. So he was trying to de-emphasize the violence and the threat of war in that situation because his experience with the military had not been, as I've just described to you, really good. And what was interesting is he got one letter from Khrushchev that was, let's try to diffuse the situation. And then a couple of days later, he got another letter from Khrushchev, which was much more provocative. And my father thought, you know, Khrushchev is probably under the same kind of pressures that Jack Kennedy was under from his military. And that would be normal because every elected official or every president has many people all around him with different viewpoints. So Daddy suggested that he answer the first letter and not the second letter. And that's what he did. And they were able to diffuse the situation and, have a blockade around Cuba, which stopped the Russian ships from going into Cuba. They made a trade on missiles in Turkey, and the nuclear missiles were taken out of Cuba. So it's good to, when you run into, what they learned is when you run into bad situations, have different people around the table with different opinions. And the other thing Jack Kennedy understood is he got out of the room, because having the boss in the room when people are discussing ideas it freezes what people want to say, because they want to, usually people want to appeal to the boss and they want to make sure that they're saying the thing that the boss likes. Right. And if the boss isn't there, they're freer to say things that they actually believe. And so my father was in the room and they could feel freer saying things about around my father than they would have around the president himself.
Wow.
Does anybody want to ask a question about that? I mean,
yeah, I was just going to say, guys, I'm fortunate enough to talk to Kathleen almost every other day. So please ask
I think it was almost every other hour, Ian.
It was at one point. Yes. So please feel free to ask your questions, guys.
If you have any, anyway.
I'm sure Mike has a question.
Probably it was for you a long time ago, but anyway.
Yeah, I do. Hi, Kathleen. I apologize. I wasn't here a little bit earlier, but I do have a question. We're in a tumultuous time right now, probably not as much as your family went through, in the Bay of Pigs era when you look at the ramifications, but it feels uncertain for sure. How would you recommend that we manage both our and our families' kind of perspective of what's going on today?
How would you recommend that the president act? Is that what you're saying?
No, how do we, like what we control?
As citizens.
As citizens, yeah.
As citizens. Well, as far as foreign policy, I think we pay attention. And if we think strongly about something, you call your congressman so that they feel that people are paying attention. Because usually that helps, because that means they feel empowered to say something. Or you call the White House. They are elected. And now this president can't be elected again, but J.D. Vance is going to be elected, is going to run for president. So he might want to hear what you have to say. So that's what I think. I think it's really is important. And, if they get 1,000 calls or 100,000 calls or 50,000 calls, that makes them think something, So I think it's really important to, if you feel strongly, call people. If you feel really strongly, get 5 other people to call as well.
To that point, I was actually, Mike, I was almost going to ask the same question. Very close. I personally, so I'm a Jewish man living in Los Angeles, working at UCLA, and I personally, in my circle, have lost a lot of confidence in, our elected officials, both local and broader, and there's so many difference of opinions. How, based on your experience and things that you've seen in your lifetime, how do we set those expectations both for ourselves and our families? Like, is this worse than it was back then? It's just, there's a lot of confidence lost in those elected officials that you're like, I don't think me emailing or contacting my local congressman, I personally don't think it's going to do anything. Right. But from your perspective, what does that look like? Does my word mean anything?
Well, your word alone does not mean anything. That is true.
That. My wife has been telling me that for years.
Well, I'm not going to get into that. But your word to your local congressman, it depends on how much time you have and how much energy you have and how much you care. And if you've got an alternative person that you like more than your local congressman, that also matters. For instance, everybody thought, I'm just talking about New York now, like a lot of people thought that Andrew Cuomo was going to win. Mm-hmm. He was much better funded. He was a name a lot of people knew. He had experience being governor. His father had experience being a governor. There was sort of this kind of sense of inevitability that Andrew was going to be the next mayor. And he wasn't. He was soundly defeated. And he was defeated by a guy who said, you're not listening to what we need in this city, which is more housing. And I'm going to make sure that we need more housing. That's what is needed. Now we need more housing. Now I have 2 daughters who live in New York, and I talked to one of them, and I asked her yesterday. She had just had a baby 5 days ago, so I asked her who she was voting for.
Congratulations.
It's a very big deal because she's 42 and she had just had 2 miscarriages, and so to be able to have a baby, So as you know, this is one of the great blessings in my life. But she said, she didn't vote for him. She voted for somebody else. But she said, if he wins, it could rocket across the United States to say there is a real yearning for change. And people want they want a lot of change. And he, as you know, he wasn't my candidate either, because I said he may win New York City, but I don't know if he's going to win anybody else. He could probably win in Los Angeles, because I think people are really fed up in Los Angeles. I have a daughter that lives in Los Angeles, and they were not happy. She was not happy. I mean, I kid you not, this story about. So I caught my daughter's preschool burnt down, so I called the congressman where a new preschool could be built and asked them if he'd get the fire department to approve the new preschool, which had been a preschool, and there were 3 steps, and they didn't approve the preschool because there were 3 steps, and they said that might be dangerous. This is an emergency. There are 20 kids that don't have a place to go to school, and the fire department is taking forever to approve it. I was frustrated. You think you're frustrated? I was frustrated. And the congressman's response was, well, call the other congressman because he has a better relationship with the fire department. Do you understand? The other congressman is not in the district. To me, this is nutty. So if you live in LA, I can see why you could have a feeling that things could be better. And so I think if people started running, they might say, we want change. And I think that's a very valid view.
Thank you.
I do have a question. When you did your pivot to cybersecurity, what are some of the things that you had to learn? What did you learn? What are some of the things that we should be looking out for, watching out for?
So I'll tell you what the biggest thing. So I did the pivot to cybersecurity. I'll tell you why I did the pivot. Because so where I sat and I was doing shipbuilding, I shared a sitting room with the people who did cybersecurity for the Navy. So they didn't discuss what they did so much, but I became friends with them. And then I noticed that the president had fired all the generals in cybersecurity in the Pentagon, the CIA, the NSA, at the FBI. And since I had learned that that was the biggest threat and that was going to be the next war, it didn't make sense that they were all being fired, because you don't usually fire your generals if you're going to go to war, right? So, and I just saw that all the television and the television, radio, and newspapers were focused on the stock market and the cuts to Medicaid. And I thought, why aren't they focusing on what might be our national security? So I called somebody up and he said, well, you're right, Kathleen, that is a problem, but there are even more serious problems. And he had me read 250 pages of papers about what's going on in cybersecurity across the world and across the United States. And then he had me talk to 5 people. And this is what I concluded. That one, the people who make our software don't make it strongly. They don't make it so it can be, they make it in such a way that it can be easily penetrated. And the people who get hurt, like people in hospitals, there's, as you know, a 20% death rate in hospitals, a 36% mistake rate in hospitals. I had a friend at what is some people consider the best hospital in the world. I can't say that to you because you work at UCLA, and that might be offensive to this group. Her mother was on the operating table, and as she got off, the electricity went off because they were being a victim of ransomware, and the hospital didn't know what medicine to give her. So people are being really hurt because of these problems. But of course, this hospital, and probably UCLA, doesn't tell anybody that they're being attacked, because why would you go to a hospital now knowing that you could be attacked? Or why would Verizon tell you that they've been attacked, or T-Mobile, and all the companies that are being attacked all the time. So there's like a code of omerta. Do you know what omerta means? Silence.
Silence. Yeah.
It's what the mob. Since my father investigated the mob, I learned some words. One of them is omerta. Don't tell anybody what's going on. So, because there's that code, the public, I learned all these facts about all the people who've been attacked and how weak things are. And because of that, the general public doesn't know how much our infrastructure, our businesses, is hurting. And they're not going to know unless somebody goes out and tells them. And so, even though I am not an expert on cybersecurity, I'm a politician, a former politician. I know about organizing, and I think that people should know what's going on, because change comes when people understand. And I'll give you an example that I gave in my talk. About 12 years ago, I read an article about how the software companies are going to get kids addicted to social media, and suicide rates are going to go up, and depression's going to go up, and eating disorders are going to go up, and it's going to be easier to commit crime in the social media. And it's just like what tobacco did. So I called a friend of mine who had just won the tobacco cases. And I said, you should sue the software companies because they're doing the same thing that tobacco did. And he laughed at me. And now everybody agrees with that analysis that was done 15 years ago. But it took 15 years for people to come to that conclusion. And so you have my granddaughter, who's 12 years old, doing a chart about what social media is doing to kids like her. And so it became common knowledge. What is not common knowledge now is what is hurting so many Americans, how weak the social media, how they're not making really safe social protection. So you guys all have jobs, but it's really hard to do your job because you're working with bad systems. Our grid is just terrible. I used to be the sewage attorney for the state of Maryland. I'm sure you all wanted to hear that. And I knew in 1980, I was the sewage attorney in 1984, and I knew in Baltimore, the sewage system was built in 1900, which was really cool. Yay, finally the city of Baltimore could have clean water. But, after 84 years, we were breaking it down. And it took another 20 years for the elected officials to say, we really better fix our sewage system. And they put a tax on sewage, and now they're fixing it up. But when in 1984, there were still cities in Maryland that didn't have a sewage system, where they're still dumping it into the water. I'm just giving you.
Yeah.
Okay. Did you really want to hear about the sewage system?
I actually have a question, Kathleen. So
sorry,
I'm trying to pivot away from the
subject.
sewage.
What?
Trying to pivot away from the sewage. Although my grandmother, she was 110 when she passed last year, and she would always have questions about sewage. She's like, how do all these people go? Anyway, she would see a large crowd, and she's like, where does all this go? Anyway, so I wanted to go back to cybersecurity, since that's a topic that you're currently pursuing. And your comment around how the systems don't work, right? Or the way that they're built is really, when DARPA created the internet, it was an open system. The last thing they thought about was a password.
Yeah.
And so that's why really we today have this problem, because we're dealing with basically an open system that we're trying to constantly close and make secure. But the standards are essentially open. So I worked with the Cloud Security Alliance some years ago, and just sort of wanted to ask you if you've encountered some of the work they've done around software-defined perimeter, and if that is something that can be leveraged, because I've seen it and I'm pretty versed in that. But basically, it kind of changes the paradigm into, instead of connect first, authenticate second, it goes authenticate first and then allows the user to connect. So it really helps to change that paradigm. So just really question, have you seen that? Has that, and what's your experience with that?
Since I got interested in this 4 weeks ago, no.
Okay, that's very recent. Okay.
So the answer is no. This is what I do understand, and I intend to learn a lot more. I do understand that Europe has passed a law secure at the start, and that's what I'm interested in seeing and getting done in the United States. I also understand that when Europe passed that law, they didn't get all the right people engaged, so that there's a secure at the start group, and then there's a privacy group, and they disagree with each other. So when you pass legislation, you should get the lawyers, the tech people, the business people, and the privacy people, and the government people all together, so everybody agrees what the law is supposed to be. And then you get the police and the CIA and the security people understanding how you can implement the law, because it doesn't make sense to have a law that you can't implement and that you can't hold people accountable. As you heard, I was in charge of the police when I was lieutenant governor, so I'm very focused on how you implement laws and how you make it. So that's, and I would love it if you, I'm going to give you my email now. Do you have a pencil or a pen?
I have my computer.
Hallelujah.
I could put on the
pencil somewhere.
Okay, well.
I'll have to sharpen them probably.
Okay, well, you have your computer. It's KK2Ks Towns TOWNS @gmail. So if you could send me what you were talking about, I'd love to learn more about it. I have not, I've talked to a number of people, and that term has not come up in any conversation I've heard so far. And so that sounds very good. I'm in the Washington has some terms that they use, and I bet California has other terms that they use. So,
well, I'll send you that. I also wrote an article on it, so it kind of explains it. But it's a technology that it's kind of like, if you call, it's like say Bluetooth. Like everybody can implement Bluetooth because it's a standard, and so this can be implemented by anyone. It can be implemented by Google or whoever. So it's an interesting, and it actually is technology that came out of one of the agencies that from government agencies. So it's pretty good. So yeah, I'll share that with you.
All right, thank you. And since it's so good, what does it protect? Why hasn't? Well, let's see if other people have other things to say, and then we can go back to this, or I can talk to you offline about that.
Sure.
All right, we have time check 10 minutes. So if you have any questions from the audience, please ask them now or post it on the chat.
Comments.
It's great and a blessing to have met you, Kathleen. I have a question about AI.
Yes.
Do you use it at work? And if so, do you like it?
No, I don't use it at work. So there's no question about whether I like it or don't like it at the moment. I'm going to learn all these things, but I was focused. The truth is, when I was doing the shipbuilding, I was focused on getting more welders and machinists into shipbuilding. And then I learned the shipyards were in such bad shape. So I started a program called No Shipyard Left Behind. I mean, we are so one of the great things that we did, I think, under the previous administration is recruit a Korean shipyard to Philadelphia, because the Koreans and the Japanese use a lot of technology to build ships. Just so you know, the Chinese use a lot too, but we were not going to build Chinese ships in the United States. But we have a lot to learn on how to use technology in our ship. I'm just saying. And we had just in one of our shipyards 18,000 bad welds. So we have so much on basic things. That's what I was focused on. And I should have been focused more on AI, Marissa. And if you were in Washington, I would come and learn from you.
I just know the simple ones.
Well, that's probably where I should start.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Well, thank you for my happy early birthday. Just so you know, my birthday is the 4th of July, because, you know, I come from this political family, and my mother wanted my brother to also be born on the 4th of July. So she played 6 sets of tennis. And
Didn't work.
it worked. He was born on my 12th birthday.
Oh my goodness.
And that's when my uncle was president. And so he landed in a helicopter in Hyannisport. And my mother wanted to go to Boston to give birth to the baby. And the helicopter pilot didn't know how to get to Boston. So at that point, my Uncle Teddy was the senator. So he said, well, I know how to get to Boston. So he got in the helicopter and followed the road up to Boston. And that was before everybody had helicopter pads. And they landed in the football field at Harvard, because Teddy knew where the football field at Harvard was. I know this has nothing to do with
Yeah, it definitely
AI, but
has a lot of risk.
But I'm trying to at least amuse you with the last 2 minutes of this.
So I do have one question. So how are you organizing? I know you got into this pivot 4 weeks ago. So what is your plan? What are you organizing, or are you trying to change the law or bring in
Yes.
new law?
So this is so where I am right now is Georgetown University, and I was just talking to a professor at the law school who does national security and technology. So what I'd like to do is put together work, cross my fingers, raise some money that we could have a group that focuses on what kind of law we should have, and you know, talk to people that I've described to you, what kind of law we would have, how we would have an outreach to the general public about what the challenges are, so that we would then have support for the law, just as we had support for tobacco changes, how we had support for when Ralph Nader said we need to have seatbelts in the car, just as we had support for, you know, raising the drinking age from 18 to 21. You have to get public support for change in a law. And then how would you, and then we would work with police. How would you implement that law? So that's what I'm trying to do, is find a place where we could do that. And I think a university setting is a good place. Finally, I particularly, I don't know if Georgetown would be interested, but as you know, this new technology has made it much easier to commit crime. It's made it easier for teenagers to commit crime. It's made it easier to traffic drugs, money, children. And so what could we do? This doesn't have to do with, you know, breaking into ransomware issues or just breaking into the grid, but just easier just to commit a lot of other types of crimes. What could we do on that scale? To tell you the truth, I have absolutely no idea about that. I mean, but because I care about crime, I'm interested in that question. So I'd like to work with people who might have some ideas about that. So that's what I'd like to do. What the challenge for me at the moment, if any of you have ideas, I have to raise money to make that happen. And as I've said, I don't know if the software companies really want to give money to this because it would force them to change. And I don't know if the people who have been attacked want to give money to it because they like their silence. I mean, if they wanted to, they could have started. This idea for doing this kind of institute or center, they could have done 5 years ago. You know, this is not great. You know, it didn't take me to think of this idea. This is kind of a self-evident idea. So I'm trying to figure out who would be interested in giving money to make this happen. So if any of you have ideas, you now have my email. You know Ian, and that's that. So that's what I'm trying to do. But I do have a plan as to what should be done. I just have to now figure out how to make it happen.
The AI can help.
AI would know how to rob a bank to help, but I don't know what else they would.
Oh no, not that.
All right, we have 2 minutes. While we have time for one more question.
Well, maybe not a question, but that's that. It might be that, you know, for instance, the hospital association might want to do something because everybody knows that the hospitals are being attacked. I mean, this is not a secret like the telecommunication. And so that might be, I mean, I'm just thinking with all of you sitting there. I mean, look how many people UCLA has hired. So that, you know, if you think about associations, maybe they'd like to make this happen. So that would be
a lot of the targets of ransomware could be your funding sources.
Yeah, so that's what I'm thinking about. That would make some sense.
All right, I think we are at the top of the hour, so I want to thank you for your time, taking time out of your busy schedule and meetings at Georgetown. So thank you very much, Kathleen, and thanks everyone.
Thank you.
Definitely.
Thank you. It's been good to be with you. I really appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank
We'll
you.
do this again. Thank you so much.
Wish you all the best. Take care.
Thank
care.
I want to thank Ian, who really helped me so much when I was doing my talk. I couldn't have done it without him. So
Happy to be of service.
thank you. He's
Thanks,
great.
Thanks, Ian.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.